You're listening to the Cynic Radio Podcast. Now, your hosts, Igri and Cynic.
This is episode 41 of the Cynic Radio Podcast, and I'm your host, Cynic. And with me, as always, our very own answer to Ryan Seacrest. I mean, this guy can list things with the best of them. My friend and yours, Igri. And this week we get to discuss the ratings-breaking premiere last week of Game of Thrones, and also the Ed Sheeran cameo controversy. But our main event is Season 7, Episode 2 of Game of Thrones, entitled Stormborn. Also, a little bit of really and what's up for you, because we are the Cynic Radio Podcast, and we want to thank you for all the support we received this week, and also for our first downloads from Yemen and South Korea. Now, I know what you're thinking, folks, but this actually happened. I've got screenshots. Like, listen, and subscribe. Most importantly, enjoy the show. Miss out on that latest viral video? Didn't see the most recent trailer for the next movie coming out? In the dark about what the biggest song in America is? We've got you covered. Every week we scour the internet and look for the latest and greatest. This is What's Up.
What's up for me this week is Season 3 of Ballers. We've got a couple episodes out, 2 to be exact. This is a good show. You can find it all on HBO, HBO Go, HBO On Demand. All the episodes are there. The first 2 seasons are a blast to get through, and the third season is showing so far to be amazing. So it's great. It's a good time. Stars The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and it's got Rob Corddry. I don't care what he's in. He's awesome. He's so much fun to watch. Go check it out on HBO or any platform that you can find it on, and I think even a bunch of episodes are available on Amazon Prime. Ballers. That's what's up.
So my what's up this week is a pretty heartwarming end to what could have possibly been a depressing tale. Last week, a young woman in Maryland who was just 20 years old was buying groceries for her family but didn't have enough money to buy diapers, and in a sad effort decided to shoplift them for her child. The store caught her and subsequently called the police. The officer that was dispatched to handle the arrest was a rookie named Bennett Johns. Upon showing up and realizing what the situation actually was, he took it upon himself to go ahead and go buy the diapers for her himself. I think that these small acts of kindness are what we all need more of today when there are so many things a person can be disgruntled about. This kind act by Officer Johns to pay it forward, see this mother was obviously desperate in need, and do his part by helping instead of hauling her off to jail. Kind of warms the heart, I have to say. So Officer Johns, for the kind act of the week, and I'm sure making this young mother's day, you are what's up.
What's up for me this week is Ozark, Season 1 on Netflix. The always great Jason Bateman and Laura Linney. It's a very suspenseful, fun watch as the Birds from the city of Chicago move to the Ozark region in Missouri for a business opportunity. So you add a little bit of fish out of water tale and a dash of Mexican drug cartel and maybe a splash of very scary get shit done old school locals. Oh, and by the way, Marty Bird, played by Bateman, is a financial advisor / money launderer. And you get a very interesting fun watch with a deep Breaking Bad feel to it. I would definitely check it out. I mean, I wasn't crazy about the ending. I'll be honest about that. But the entire season is strong throughout with great antagonists and great performances by the entire cast. So Ozarks, Season 1 on Netflix. This week, that's what's up. And we're sorry about the delay on this episode, but one of us was on vacation and that person wasn't named Jules for once. So it's time for the CRP brief and vague recap. Arya Frey has the family over for the world's worst wine tasting. The Stark's banner rang high on Winterfell's walls, but now about that army of the dead. Uncle Euron comes to King's Landing, and brother be damned, his eyes are set on Jaime's better half. And this all leads to Episode 2, Stormborn. You're not here to be the Queen of the Ashes. Tyrion seems to think that taking the winning the hearts and minds approach of anyone whose name isn't Lannister is the best approach to win the Iron Throne. IG, do you agree with him?
Wholeheartedly, quite honestly. I mean, right now, the Lannisters, with everything they've done, it seems like they're having a little bit of a revolt against him. I mean, and that's part of the reason I believe Cersei won't ever walk out of the Red Keep alive, because she's a Lannister and she's the one that's kind of orchestrated everything going on. I can't believe Jaime's willing to leave at any point, because, I mean, the Lannister thing, I mean, yeah, they are the ones that are in power, but they're just, if you're talking about 7 kingdoms worth of people, I don't know. It's kind of a bad decision.
Yeah, I think that Daenerys definitely, we can obviously write off the Lannisters as ever being on their side. And I think that Daenerys is going to take the right approach with this, because I think Tyrion has the best, most suitable advice for what she needs to do and how she needs to approach things, because I think he's seen things from a way of how things were handled by the Mad King, how things are handled by Lannisters or Baratheon, and he's seen it all up close and personal. And I think he's going to have pretty solid advice on the best way to win the hearts of everybody.
From the files of things we should have discussed before we aligned ourselves with someone named the Spider, Emo Danny questions Varys' loyalty. What were your thoughts on that exchange? Do you see the Master Whisperer's point, and do you trust him?
I trust Varys completely. One of the things I really liked about this whole part right there was when she said something, "I will burn you alive," and he kind of smiled at her, almost in a way, a knowing way, where he was like, that's not going to be necessary. I feel that you're going to take the right direction. I won't need to turn on you. But I really did love the way that Varys stood up to her, because you could see it was turning. Things were turning left. And he stood up, and he stood up strong to her to say, I know what I've done in the past looks like. I've changed allegiances, but I've done it for the good of the people. And I will do it again if I have to, if I think that you're going crazy, but I don't think it's going to be necessary.
Well, I think one of the things he's got going for him is he has nothing to either lose or gain from whoever ends up in power. He's sitting at Daenerys' side right now purely to advise, and because he believes in her. And that just speaks volumes about Varys, is that he could have just stayed in King's Landing. Cersei was listening to him sort of as much as Cersei has listened to anybody. His little birds across the world are absolutely useful. He is a very good master of whispers. But he chose to go where he went. He chose to bring Tyrion with him. He could have left. He could have not followed Tyrion after he got captured by Jorah. He could have gone anywhere he wanted. And, Varys is one of those people that no matter what happens, he's going to land up on top. He's going to find a way to make himself useful and prosperous. But he's here by pure choice. And if she wins, great. If she loses, that's great for him too. He's there giving nothing but truth.
I enjoyed the back and forth between the two of them because it was very honest, it was very open, and this is exactly what Dany needs, is people that aren't going to yes her to death, and people who aren't just going to nod their head, or people who aren't going to spend the majority of the time complaining in the conversation. They're going to tell her the truth. And I think the smile at the end that Varys gave her was, he knows exactly that she's a woman of her word, and she's going to do that. If she catches him kind of leaning either way, she will burn him with dragon's fire. I enjoyed that scene for what it was, because I think that they're most definitely on the same page. And I like the fact that she asked for the truth. She said, Varys, I want you to promise me that if I ever kind of fall out of line, or you see me going the wrong way, that you're going to straighten me out. And that's what a good leader needs. We're only a day in, and she's already threatening to burn people with her dragons. The mother of dragons seems to be regretting her all-expense-paid trip to Westeros. Jules, have you ever gone on vacation like Dany and had it rain basically the whole time you were there? I mean, you spend as much time in Florida as Trump. And have you ever spotted Dragonstone while you were out there?
First of all, don't be a hater. But second of all, I have not gone on a vacation where it's rained the whole time, but I have gone on a vacation to Florida, where it was very cold the whole time. It was like 50 degrees and you couldn't really do anything. So that was a bit of a bummer.
50 is like July weather for IG. Be fair.
Be fair. Come on. I mean, that's shorts, tank tops, tube tops, and thongs. Here we go.
Oh, he had to go with the thongs. I can't speak of prophecies or visions in the flames, but I like Jon Snow. I trust him, and I am an excellent judge of character. What do you do when religious fanatics show up at your door clad in red and speak of her Lord and Savior Jon Snow? Do you summon the new King of the North, or hand back that copy of Winterfell Tower and bid her a good day? Yeah,
I think summoning the Warden of the North, the King of the North, whatever you'd like to call him at this point. We're all at a point where we see we know everything that's happening, and some of these people know a lot, but no one knows everything except us, the viewer. So we have a distinct advantage of why they should get together. Problem is, you don't know until things start happening. And we know from last season that they're related. They don't know. Okay, that's weird. But yeah, I guess, in that aspect, I would say, yes, you summon the Lord of the North and hope that he'll come. But just writing someone a thing and saying, come here and bend the knee, that seems a little pushy.
I was kind of surprised she took that tack myself, that I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to gain loyalty. And I mean, Tyrion kind of pointed that out to her right from the get-go, that you don't just get loyalty from people because of your last name. You've got to kind of earn it. And having dragons and having an army will get you loyalty out of fear, but it's not going to actually get you loyalty.
Well, and that I didn't understand about that also was she came there and she basically said, yes, I found you. This is great. But what you need to do is reach out to Jon Snow because you equally need his help. I don't feel like Melisandre had ever positioned it like you need to bring him here to bend the knee to you. It felt very much like you need him, he needs you, work together. And then all of a sudden Dany went left and was like, yeah, he can come here and bend the knee. And I wasn't really feeling that either.
Queen Cersei holds court in the no-spin zone and actually does a pretty compelling job convincing the Tyrell Bannermen that Dany is a threat to their way of life. Were you shocked at the fact that she might actually be good at this? And was she so convincing that you wanted to take up arms against Dany?
Did you say in the no spin zone?
Yes, the no spin zone. You know, the biggest thing about taking arms up against Dany is we've seen way too much of Cersei. We know too much. Those other people she called to hold court against, they may not know as much, but we know too much. So I can't say I'm going to want to stand up against her either. But, you know, there was a pretty convincing tale. I could see how some of them would absolutely feel like, all right, yeah, okay, she's going to burn us all to death. Yeah, let's try and do something against this.
And she was spinning it, but she wasn't saying anything that wasn't true about Daenerys. So, I mean, definitely had her spin on it. That's for sure.
We get a great exchange between Jaime Lannister and Sam's dad, Randall Tarly. The Tarleys of Horn Hill being the last few powerhouses left. Jules, forget a Klondike bar. What would you do to be Warden of the Midwest? And could you get any family to do just about anything by offering the Warden's job?
Now all I have is, what would you do for a Klondike bar? In my head. Thank you for that. Yeah, I feel like Jaime kind of positioned himself. I feel like he kind of, I'm just going to overlook what your question was thoroughly and just go on to my own rant. But I feel like Jaime did, you know, he laid out a good mea culpa to the Tarleys to explain why it was important to, you know, join with him. I think that the Tarleys at this point, it was probably a little bit of a hard decision for him because, like you said, he's known Olenna since he was a child, but I think it was definitely important for him to, I think whenever you're going with the crown at this point, I think that was probably the safest bet that Tarly could go with at that point.
See, I'm not completely convinced that he went with it. I'm not completely convinced that even if he's standing there that he's going to make his decision and stick to whatever he says. He seems to me like a guy who's going to go after further research. And here's the thing, you know, Warden of the Midwest, I mean, Lord have mercy. Are we splitting up these things into, all right, these 3 blocks over here you get to watch, you know, and, you know, Warden of the North is like, you know, well, they've got, you know, I don't know. Well, but they have like thousands of square miles.
Right.
Or he actually offered him job Warden of the South. Warden of the Midwest was in reference to where Julie and you live.
I understand.
But I get what you're saying,
but that's the thing is, you know, the South compared to the North is like, and first of all, I mean, if you're Warden of the South, where the Red Keep is at, the Red Keep is in the South. Are you really warden of anything? I mean, the Royal Guard and everybody, the gold cloaks, red cloaks, whatever you want to call them, are literally a day's ride from anything. So any uprising should happen. The North is a big deal. You got to have a warden up there. Somebody has to enforce the king or queen's law from a distance, because the only other thing you have then to reach at a decent time frame is a raven. You don't need a warden of the South or a warden of the East or a warden of the West or a wicked witch even. You could do any of these things without that. I mean, so it's literally given a man who has a title, because he is a lord. He has a house. He has a castle. You're not giving him anything else except headaches, and you can tell that it's headaches from the previous Wardens of the North. It's all a headache.
It's all prestige, I think. It's really not in the name. I mean, it was great kind of that conversation between Jamie and Randall, because he went through, all right, well, mispronouncing your son's name doesn't work. Yeah, complimenting you over beating Robert isn't enough. All right, how about I make you Battlefield General? Okay, that's not enough. All right, and by the way, we need a new Warden of the South. Oh, bingo. Suddenly, Randall's Tarly, I'm willing to give up all oaths and, I'm willing to throw the Tyrells by the wayside because we've got eunuchs and savages, and, oh, by the way, I get to be Warden of the South. So there's something about that job. If you're not going to be the king, and you're not going to be the king's hand, it seems like warden of whatever direction you live in seems to be the key, because we saw what the Boltons did to get theirs. We saw what the Freys did to get theirs. So it just elevates your family to the upper tier. And, people were willing to just cut each other's throats to get that title.
I think he really pled his case when he was telling, obviously the Warden of the South helped, but when he started to say, yeah, this friend of yours, this Olenna friend of yours, she brought over these savage warriors that don't come over here, that are just like an urban legend in some ways to us when we talk about how their savagery, but she's bringing them over here. And I can see how him kind of, it's like bringing the wildlings in, these people that aren't supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be in our domain, and now they're encroaching in our territory. I think that held a big part in possibly where Randall's going to fall too.
See, and I think the biggest fall over here is that they don't have their own version of CNN, Fox News, or anything like that. Because, if this guy knew what people with Warden in their title had happening to them recently, maybe they don't want it as much. I mean, you got the Boltons. They took over. I'm Warden of the North now. Hey, great. They're all dead. You got Walder Frey. I'm Warden of this bridge or, these 12 city blocks. They're all dead now. I mean, maybe Warden isn't all it's cracked up to be.
We seem to lose Wardens as quick as we lose kings. Nobody's safe when it comes to this whole power structure thing. Sam makes the bold move to help Jorah Mormont on the DL. Do you think his last name was the catalyst for this, or do you think he would have saved anybody? I personally think that Mormont had a lot to do with the fact that Sam chose to treat him. The old bear showed a lot of faith in Sam. His decision to let Sam graduate and move into the Stewarts pretty much saved his life, because he would have been left alone with Alistair. Pip and Gurn and John were all moving on to the upper ranks of the Night's Watch, and he would have been left with the recruits. So he pretty much would have been beaten to death for the most part by Alistair and his cronies. So I think Mormont had a lot to do with it, but I also think Sam, he's starting to kind of shed that coward skin and do what's right. I mean, he's there on a mission, and he's going to help out John, but I think if he can save lives or kind of further his position, further his courage in the meantime, I think he most definitely is going to do it.
Well, and the thing about Sam is Sam has shown the ability and the willingness to take risks. It's quite simple. He'll take a risk. Whether or not it's going to work out, we'll see. But funny enough, for Sam, things tend to work out. It's not a bad deal for Sam.
He really does have a pretty good batting average.
Yeah, he's batting close to 1,000 at this point.
I like him standing up for himself too, because it's like, yeah, you guys might be archmaesters and you might have all this jewelry hanging around your neck and all your chains, but just because I'm green and I'm new doesn't mean I don't know what I'm talking about. You need fresh blood. You need people that have new visions and new ideas and even obviously sometimes old ideas, just going back through old texts and reading how to cure things that may be being overlooked. And so I think people like Sam are important to believe in themselves and their convictions and say, you know what, I don't agree with you guys. I'll just handle the wrath later, but I'm going to save this guy now.
Well, I think Archmaester Two Chains is just kind of the mind that they got to stay back in the way that they do things. Well, the Citadel has run a certain way for millennia. So they're used to, this is how we do things. You follow the law, we set the law, and you can't do anything else. And that's fine. Sam doesn't live in that world. And he does, but he doesn't. I mean, I've seen some really interesting theories come out And one of them directly applies to this stuff because they're like piling books on Sam, and he's carrying them around, and he's like, "I'm not writing the story of the time since Robert Baratheon and the fall of kings and everything." And he's like, and Sam looks at him like, "That's kind of a shit title," and he's like, "What would you name it?" Something a little more poetic. So one of the things I read was that these might all be rewritten from Sam's perspective. That's why it's more poetic, A Song of Ice and Fire. Isn't that a lot more poetic than, the three kings since Robert Baratheon?
Right.
It's kind of interesting. And that's the thing is Sam has the potential and the way he's willing to go about things to be the greatest maester that has ever existed.
Also, I think something important real quick with Sam is he's seen the White Walkers. He does still have that sense of urgency. Like, you know what? You can tell me whatever I can do. I'm just going to keep plowing through because I know I've got to become this maester. I've got to figure things out because all this other stuff is nonsense. Ultimately, we've still got a mission here.
Qyburn obviously got a hold of copies of the Hobbit trilogy on Blu-ray, as they're planning on using a giant crossbow to bring the dragons down. IG, are you a little disappointed in the lack of originality in the writing here? I mean, and do you think the plan would work?
I think it's a little lame. Things that have to line up perfectly, and this being TV/movies/fantasy, obviously if they want it to work, it's going to work. If the showrunners or the writers want it to work, it's going to work. Do I think that they're absolutely going to be able to take all three dragons down with this one crossbow? No, I think the end result is they'll probably get at least one. Probably not Drogon.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that.
I'm willing to bet one of the other two dragons so that there's effect. But, Drogon being the dragon's reincarnation of Drogo. I think that because she holds that one so dear to her, I think that would be the one that doesn't get killed.
Yeah, that makes total sense. This is pure
speculation, folks. I don't know one way or another what's going to happen, but my speculation to me says that there's no way that they kill that one. And, the thing is shooting through 1,000-year-old dragon skull isn't like shooting through a living dragon, though, either. So, I mean, it is feasible that it bounces off. Well, not only does it move, but skulls are tougher in living things than they are in things that have died because everything that happens with anatomy, it's how it works, and then we don't know how hard the scale is. Yeah, there were people when the dragon landed in Bravos and they were stabbing it with the spears and everything else. Yeah, it took some damage, but it still flew out of there and it didn't have to lick its wounds too long until it was off and wreaking havoc and burning ships again.
I like your theory there, though. I could definitely see that happening where one of them goes down. It's going to affect Daenerys. It's going to affect Drogon. It's going, you know what I mean? And then, it's going to come off like a loss, but then they'll come back, better.
In the 1970s, Captain Tennille informed us that love would in fact keep us together. But in Dany's band of merry, scorned, revenge-seeking misfits, is it actually contempt that's keeping them together, Jules? I mean, is Dragonstone built on salt? How long can the Breaker of Chains keep this group together?
Well, it is a ragtag misfit kind of group there. It seems like all sort of outcasts in a sort of way. But I feel like they have that common hate going on, which is taking Cersei's throne from her. And I think that can work, but the problem with that sometimes is sometimes if one of the wheels falls off in any way, then the whole thing just crumbles. So I'm going to try to hope for the best on this one, but I'm not sure it will actually come to fruition that they're all, and perfect alignment in the end.
I guess my thing on this is I don't believe that they're there because they're being pushed to be there. I think they're all there because they want to be there, and the wheels don't need to be working perfectly for them to be there. I think you could blow a couple of flats, have everything else happen, and they'd all still try and put everything back together and see if they could keep working. They're not one thing's not going to go awry, and they're going to go, well, that didn't work. I'm going back to the other side. That being said, a couple of weeks ago, I said that Cynic was the world's biggest Captain and Tennille fan, and it was just proven, ladies and gentlemen. There it is.
I like a good Easter egg and callback. So your master plan is to use our armies. Why did you bother to bring your own? IG, what do you think about Tyrion's plan for attack? I mean, is symbolically taking Casterly Rock worth the effort?
That remains to be seen itself. Casterly Rock being the stronghold of the Lannisters means something to the Lannisters. Now, I don't know if it'll mean anything to the rest of Westeros. And that's where my question on this is. I don't know if the rest of Westeros cares what happens to a castle. I think because it doesn't necessarily affect everything unless that castle is providing all the food, money, something. It's got to be providing something. And I don't know what the Lannisters provide besides Lannisters, because it's not really been clear that they're really good at anything as far as farming or anything else. They're good at having sex because they've got a lot of people. So that's what they're good at.
Strategy, maybe they're good at that.
Well, one of them is good at that, but that one isn't there anymore. That one's not acting in the interest of the Lannisters. Now, the flip side of that, the plan of sending people from Westeros to take the Red Keep, taking Westerosi and doing it home style, that makes perfect sense. That is a beautiful plan, because if you send a bunch of Dothraki and Unsullied over there who are foreign invaders to take it, that may rile the people. So Tyrion's viewpoint on that is absolutely perfect. And the pushback that Daenerys initially got seemed a little short-sighted. Now, it was explained and they tended to get on board, but you know, they should have thought about that. These are supposed to be like the cream of the crop from each of the houses. So when they explain these things to them, it ought to make sense a little faster. I mean, because Tyrion basically mansplained it down to them.
Well, they want revenge and they want it now. Nobody wants to wait. Everybody wants to see Cersei burn. You know, they're all there for that main event. They've gathered together under one flag, and that's to kill Cersei for the things that she's done to them. Them coming in and pussyfooting around and namby-pamby and, oh, well, we want to do this the right way. It doesn't get them where they want to go faster, you know, because you have to stop off at the market doesn't get me home any sooner. You know, they don't care how Daenerys wins the throne because they don't have to hold the throne once it's won. They just want revenge, and then they'll all kind of nod and go their separate ways, like at the end of the Breakfast Club. Don't you forget about me, Egg.
And you're very right in that, but they need to remember that if they're following somebody, that somebody's plan may stretch farther than we have the throne now, because you're going to need something to rule after you've taken it, and if you have the people behind you because you took it the right way, if the people see, and you know the people that are in King's Landing are seeing that Cersei is basically the devil. Okay, great.
You would think the Tyrell Bannerman would worry they'd be slaughtered if they even showed up in that throne room. I mean, she's doing a good job of sweeping this whole, oh, by the way, I destroyed half the city and a bunch of innocent people and the power structure of a couple houses, you know, and I blew, you know, that, and the real victim in this is that poor guy that was standing there that got hit by that fucking bell. I can't get that out of my head. You know, you imagine you're just kind of hanging out like, oh, there's shit happening at the church, and then you get, you know, you got stuff to do afterwards. You got a shopping list. Your wife sent you out. You get, you know, you got soccer practice with the kids, and you get crushed by a fucking bell. I mean, I just personally can't get over that.
You really can't. That is.
The people at King's Landing haven't either upright rebellion against the crown now, or just plain left because they don't know what craziness is coming next. Because, okay, we had the Battle of Blackwater a couple of seasons ago, and then you've got, you know, shit blowing up inside the city. And I'm not saying like a little explosion, like, oh my God, like they're probably still roasting marshmallows on the outskirts of town because that fire was big. And we're still dealing with all of this stuff, and the people are still there. And that's the thing that I'm having a hard time with. But again, suspension of disbelief. But really, it's not about the people that are at King's Landing that you need to get to wrap around this. You need to get the rest of the Seven Kingdoms to see that you're doing it with people from the Seven Kingdoms. So Tyrion is absolutely right in how he swayed Daenerys and made everything happen, because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, this is not Daenerys' plan. This is all Tyrion. Tyrion is the plan maker. Tyrion is the one that has the ideas and how to make things work. Daenerys is a good figurehead. She's what
and
our
listener.
president should be, and she does a good job listening to her advisors. And the main advisor she listens to is the man she named as her hand. He makes wonderful decisions, and we can hope that none of them are going to fall apart, because we all know that the best laid plans don't always work out that way.
The Queen of Thorns informs Daenerys, you're a dragon. Be a dragon. Is that what it's going to take to win this war? Fire and blood?
Well, I guess that was sort of my question when I watched this, and I've watched this episode a few times. I felt like Tyrion really laid out a really good plan. There was strategy involved. I feel like they had all their bases covered. And I do understand Olenna, and I do understand that she rocks and she kicks ass, and she probably hasn't listened to anybody, and she's gotten to where she is because of that. And she is an old lady, and you don't get to be around that long normally. But I guess I really didn't understand why she was directing Daenerys to not listen to Tyrion, because I feel like Tyrion does have her interests at heart, and he was giving good advice. Did you guys think that?
Well, I think my idea of that is, one, Lady Olenna knows that he's a Lannister, and maybe there's something devious afoot.
Oh.
Secondly, any good leader isn't going to take advice from only one source. And you've got all these great families there. Let them all develop a plan, and let's bring them together and workshop them and see which plan is best. These decisions, although sound decisions and good plans, are coming together entirely too quick, and they're like, this is what we're doing. And really the plan is coming out of one mind. And the problem with coming out of one mind is we're all possible to not make good decisions. And it may sound like a good decision, may feel like a good decision, and in the end it may not be. And when you put more people in it, put a couple more spoons in the pot, you might get some things going on. And I think that's part of the thing that I think, especially Lady Olenna, who has been around the block once or twice, this is not her first rodeo, is saying, we have seen things come and go in our lifetimes. So maybe taking a moment to re-examine everything we're doing here may be beneficial. So I think that's where it comes from. I could be way off. Cynic, what do you think?
Well, it brings me back to The Godfather, where they were talking about the different capos, and they were like, well, he's a peacetime one and he's a wartime one. Tyrion is a great mind, and I'm sure he's read a lot on the subject, but how much does he actually know about war? How much experience does he have other than, the brief battles that we saw him in, the long-term implications of war and how it's done? And it kind of reminds me, too, of how we've decided to fight wars nowadays, where it's sort of white glove. We bomb this place and we don't bomb that place. And, we've got the press with us. And, it's kind of like a kinder, gentler war. Meanwhile, our opponents have gotten much, much more savage about the way they did things. I think it's a great plan that he's laid out, but it may be, we'll see, but it may be time to bring the hammer.
I feel like too, Cersei said this in one episode. She goes, I wasn't raised by our father for 40 years and not learn anything. Well, I kind of feel the same with Tyrion. He was raised, under that same house. So he's had to learn stuff about strategy. And that's why I do feel like he should know, even if he wasn't in exact wars as the commander or anything, he's got to have picked up stuff.
Right, but what I'm looking at, speaking of that very thing, is that while the Lannisters may have been in a lot of wars, they weren't the leaders, and they certainly weren't the people that were going to directly benefit by taking the crown at the end of it. Yeah. Right now, we have a Lannister on the seat by pure process of elimination.
Yeah.
Everybody else died, so she's there. It's not based on fighting or ruling or anything else. I mean, she just fell into the spot, and that's great. But if you didn't put yourself there on the backs of the people and have them ascend you into the throne, maybe you're not quite sure what you're doing. And that's the thing is I've looked at a lot of the family trees and the history of Westeros just because the Game of Thrones really does excite me and it's a lot of fun to look at. And I don't see anywhere in the past that a Lannister was sitting there before right now.
Grey Worm and Missandei say their goodbyes, and it's a tender moment for sure. But did she, upon disrobing Grey Worm, have that look on her face like she had 10,000 spoons and all she needed was a knife? Jules, what are your feelings of them as a couple? Does it hit you right in the feels, or is it trying to fit a non-existent peg into a round hole?
Okay, first of all, high five on your 10,000 spoons, but all you need is a knife. That's a good one. Did it hit me in my feels? Yes and no. I think Grey Worm had some nice lines there about, when he said she was his weakness. I thought that was a really sweet moment, but I too was probably like millions of others just wanting to see what it looked like. And I was
and
not
he still didn't show you
that opportunity. Too much CGI.
There's some great memes with just her on her knees and then Ken's body from the waist down.
Right.
It cracks me up. IG is falling for Missandei, putting Grey Worm at a distinct disadvantage when he goes into battle.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, he says that she is his weakness, but I think one of the reasons soldiers throughout history have been able to accomplish amazing things is the things that they think they're going to come home to when they're done. They perform nearly impossible tasks every day just so that they can come home to their families, just so that they can come home to their loved ones. And sometimes it's not even a romantic love. Sometimes it's like, I need to see my dog again or my mom. So most of the Unsullied at this point, having been ripped from their mothers when they were still very young and just beaten and trained until they were unfeeling monsters. If one of them gains this, it may actually make him stronger. It may make him better because he has something that he wants to live for. So he might be able to do just uncanny things.
You've been making pies. Did it bother you to see how disconnected Arya was when it came to her discussion with Hot Pie?
I'm afraid I'm going to say too much. I'm not sure what your next question might be, but I feel like there was initially a disconnection between her and him. She is a different person. She is not the same Arya that he knew a long time ago. That's a really interesting question you posed because I didn't necessarily look at it as a disconnection. I kind of looked at it as they were two people that knew each other once a long time ago. Like if you run into somebody from middle school or something and you're like, oh, hey, what have you been up to? I guess I didn't really get that it was an overwhelming disconnection, but I felt that there was still, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of stumped on that one because I didn't feel like it was too obvious of a disconnection, just that she's moved on. She's a little bit different now.
Well, let me lay it out for you this way. I mean, really what I saw there was not necessarily a disconnect between Arya and Hot Pie. What I saw was a disconnect between Arya and Westeros. Arya is right now on a mission where she believes that pretty much all of her family is dead and it's caused by these 12 people on her list, basically. She's on her way to killing spree through Westeros. So she's going to knock the people off. And she's, just like last week when she said to the Lannister men that she's on her way to King's Landing so she can kill the queen. They all laughed because, yeah, right. No, she's on her way. I mean, she just killed all the Freys. Why not? Why not?
In one fell swoop.
What bothered me was that they left... All right, so they went through a lot together. They weren't really close. I mean, in the beginning, she threatened to kill him, but they went through a lot together. And they left on a very, very tender moment where she was riding away with the bannerman with no names, and she looked back and she was eating the pie, and he's kind of staying to fulfill his dream as a baker, which, oddly enough, he became a baker in real life, but we'll skip past that. The fact that she didn't want to make eye contact, the fact that, she herself had been through, a storybook full of stuff since they lost each other. She had no interest in sharing it with him. She didn't really want to interact with him. The only time she even acted remotely human or like they were connected at all was when he let her know that Jon Snow was now King of the North and everything that had happened there.
That made total sense to me because I think she was trying to keep herself focused on the task at hand. Because she thought that it could very be well that she'd never see Jon again. Sansa's been killed. Any number of things could have happened. She thought the Boltons were in charge and Sansa was like under their control. There's a lot of things happening. And then all of a sudden it's like somebody whispers that bling of hope into your heart. And that's going to pull you out of that and be like, oh, what? So that's where that kind of made sense. Like she was like driven, focused on a mission. Hey, I'll eat this pie and everything is fine. Hey, what do you got there? I'll drink some of this ale too. All right, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to head off to King's Landing so I can kill me some Cersei. But then, hey, your stepbrother's alive. The Starks are back in charge of Winterfell. What?
Yeah.
Oh my God. There's life again.
Absolutely agree with what you're saying. And again, I'm going to go back to what you're saying, Joe, with her just kind of staring. I know they had a relationship. I know they were through stuff in Harrenhal and things like that. It is a conversation with Hot Pie, though, not a conversation with Gendry. I feel like she wouldn't have treated Gendry like that because their connection was deeper. They had more substance to their relationship. Her relationship with Hot Pie, in my estimation, was a much more of a superficial relationship. And that's why I could see maybe that just being like, yeah, I knew you once, we're moving on. But I agree 100% with what Egg said when it was like, yeah, cool, you're here, I still like your food. And then all of a sudden being like, wait, what? What did you just say? And she was pulled out of it because she's probably over there eating her food, just formulating her plan, what she's going to do next, you know? And he wasn't overly important to her for her to come out of that until he offered her information that brought her out.
Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, because they made it look like she left and it was headed towards Winterfell. But things always seem to go wrong whenever Arya comes close to reuniting with her family. Should she keep headed on the task at hand to King's Landing?
I don't know. Maybe she should have kept heading to King's Landing, but, you know, Arya's gotten so good at all the things she's doing. Maybe she should just head for the Wall and start taking out White Walkers. Because, I don't know, if she could pick up Lyanna Mormont on her way,
yeah,
this war is done. It's all over.
Some sort of badass Westeros Thelma and Louise just taking out White Walkers?
Right, you know, just right up there on a couple of horses and then off the cliff into a mountain of White Walkers and whatever. You know?
That'd be great.
You know, Dany does have 2 other dragons without riders.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be the time that she actually gets to reunite with the Stark, though. I think it's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to take her to get from where she is because I think she's a lot closer to King's Landing than she is to Winterfell.
Well, and here is my point, too. While I can appreciate being like, you know, the Starks are nothing but bad news and bad karma, I guess, or bad omen whenever you're around them, she's heading off not because she thinks Sansa's there, not because she thinks Bran is there or Rickon or anybody else is there. She's heading there because she knows Jon is going to be there. And Jon is the one who gave her needle. They had a special connection and she thinks everyone's dead. And the idea, well, I don't know that she thinks Jon's dead, but the idea that she is hearing that he has taken over Winterfell and it's back in their family domain again, I could absolutely see why she would rush off to Winterfell and not head to King's Landing, because then together they could be working against...
Well, she knows Jon's not dead because Hot Pie told her Jon took it back. So she knows Jon's not dead. She doesn't know about the rest of it.
Prior to him telling her anything. I don't know where she thought.
Prior to him telling her she was going to King's Landing to kill Cersei. That was just it.
But I mean, like, why has she never tried to go to the Wall? She knew Jon was going to the Wall a long, long time ago. I wonder why she's never tried to go to the Wall.
I guess my understanding of that is because she knows that the Stark family, even though he's a bastard, Stark family is held by honor, and she didn't know all these other things that happened to Jon. So she's willing to just kind of understand that no matter what happens, Jon is going to uphold his oath to the Wall. He's going to uphold his oath to taking the Black. So going to the Wall accomplishes you absolutely nothing. So if these things need to get done and she's the last man standing for the Stark family, if she's the one that the North is going to remember, she's got to go handle it by herself. And, so far she's done a bang-up job.
Well, and the key phrase of that is Stark family. Jon's no longer even remotely part of the Stark family if he's taken his vows, nor is he, if he was going to leave and do something about it, in her mind, he probably would have done it already when Robb was on the ropes during the war. So he's really not an option, or is it a safe haven for her? So continuing on, the task at hand is probably a better idea. We need the King of the North in the North, Your Grace. Ironically enough, Dragon Glass is on Dragonstone. Should Jon go, despite the firm disagreement voiced by his people, or is he falling in the same trappings that ended Robb and Ned?
They both headed south. Ned headed south. Robb headed south. They're dead. But the reasons they were heading south and the things they were heading south for were absolutely different. They were absolutely away from what Jon wants to head south for, because while getting Daenerys as an ally would be beneficial, that's not it. We need Dragonglass, and we need it by the truckload, or however they move it in that world. They don't really have trucks, I guess.
I haven't seen too many trucks, but it'd be great if one just pulled up.
Little UPS. So if that's the only place you're going to be able to get enough to be able to have any prayer of fighting this battle, and that's the thing is, the battle isn't to the south. And now all these other people that are in the south think that's where the battle is, but that's not where the battle is. We talked about this last week. The battle is to the north. I mean, if they don't all bind together, including the Lannisters, bind together to fight this enemy to the north, they're all dead. I mean, this is a massive army that everybody they kill becomes more of that army. So it's like, you can't just kill them. You need to destroy them. And the only thing they can do it with, two things: Valyrian steel, Dragonglass. Well, no one knows how to forge Valyrian steel anymore, so we better get some Dragonglass. And if there's a mountain of it on Dragonstone, then we better get to mining. We better get to getting some out of here, because that's what's needed. Simple.
We get a tense exchange between Littlefinger and the new King of the North in the crypts at Winterfell, and he lets Jon know, "I love Sansa as I loved her mother." Jules, what is Littlefinger's play by instigating Jon? And did you get the instant callback from his reaction that Ned did to him in the very first season?
I did actually get that callback immediately. But I guess I was, again, this is a question I want to ask you guys. I didn't understand why Jon had such contempt for Littlefinger. I think he doesn't get the warm and fuzzies from Littlefinger, but he actually had contempt in his face when he was talking to him. And Littlefinger did save his life, essentially. So I wasn't exactly sure where, it's like Littlefinger pointed out, I thought you might want to give me a thank you or something, So do you guys understand why there's such contempt there?
I think the biggest point that I can point out here is that it is known that Littlefinger is a conniver. He's not come by any of these things honestly. He has snaked his way into his position. He's snaked his way into becoming Lord of the Vale. And he's not even really Lord of the Vale. Robin's out there doing something. He's just basically acting as Lord of the Vale. And that's the problem, is this guy who has no actual title, who has no actual power, is parading himself around like he should be welcomed with open arms, just like any other lord of any other great house. And he's not. He's not that person. Just because he married Lysa and then threw out the moon door, which only he and Sansa know, does not make him Lord of the Vale. That's not how this works, because Robin is there. Just like if Queen Elizabeth dies tomorrow, Prince Philip does not become king then because he was married to the queen. It goes down.
Right. And I get that. I feel like there was no, I don't know. It felt a little bit out of place to have such contempt for him when he did save him.
I would like to chalk it up to being his father's son, but we all know that's not true now. But I have a feeling that there's a lot of similarities between Ned and Jon, and not just the actions withstanding, but the way they view the world, the way they view people like Littlefinger, who Littlefinger's never lifted a blade in his life other than to get almost cut in half by Ned's brother, Brandon. I have a feeling that if John knew the whole story, especially about how he sold her to the Boltons and everything else, that he would have killed him already. But I just have a feeling that the contempt is he understands who Littlefinger is, and he has no use for somebody that's not willing to do what needs to be done to accomplish the task at hand. I keep using that phrase for some reason, but
he doesn't respect the manipulation.
No, he doesn't. And he knows that every word, he may not be able to verbally stand toe to toe with Littlefinger, but he knows that every word out of his mouth is some sort of either ploy or instigation, which Sansa even pointed out, later. I think it might even be in the next episode now. But, it was the last episode that she pointed it out. But he has no respect for the shit that Littlefinger is made of.
Well, and not only that, but, the bigger side of that is that, one, they're in the crypts, which is a very sacred place to these Starks, right? Right. He said that he had the bones brought back, but it's still, that's where Starks go. We don't have other people down here that don't have business down here. Like Robert Baratheon had business down there because he was in love with Ned's sister.
Right.
Right. So he had business down there. But you don't just come down there to just try and spark up a conversation. That's not what we do here.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. I got you there.
That's a big part of it. And two, he's just down there running his mouth,
Yeah.
Can you not find a more apt time to talk to me? I mean, I'm going to be out of this crypt in a little bit. Leave me alone. Let me have my moment. Because he was standing in front of his father's thing. So,
right.
Maybe he's having that moment where, some of us, at times may have a discussion. It's a one-sided discussion, but we're having a discussion with our departed loved ones where, we would hope for some kind of sign to just point us in the right direction. And sometimes you get one. Sometimes you just get a feeling in your heart. And here's Littlefinger. You're like, I'm snarky with my little porn stash. How you doing? No.
Right. And it probably felt disrespectful. It probably felt disrespectful, too.
And it's a known fact that he lusted after Kat.
Yeah.
And going to sit here and say to Jon Snow that I love your sister just like I loved your mother. Dude.
Yeah, that was probably a poor choice of words.
Yeah.
He might have thrown in as a friend after that.
Yeah.
You're right. And Littlefinger is that one person that has to talk to you like every time you're in the bathroom, whether it be at work or at home. They can't just give you 5 minutes alone. They've got to call or they've got to text or they've got to yell through the door. He's doing that. It was obvious that John was having a moment. It was obvious that John was trying to channel his dad, or at least who he thinks is his dad, and kind of try to plan through, say his goodbyes, because he doesn't, frankly, I'm sure he's not 100% convinced that he's coming back from this trip.
Right.
Everybody keeps telling him, if you go, you may not come back. So I think he might have been saying his goodbyes, and Littlefinger came and, oh yeah, by the way, I brought his body back for you, and I saved you in the battle, and, 100% inappropriate and bad timing. You think Littlefinger would pick a smarter time. I know that he wanted to get Jon alone to push his agenda forward, but it didn't work out in his favor, obviously.
No, that was good. Okay, that makes sense now.
IG, if you throw rocks at something until it runs away and it comes back with an angry pack of wolves and declines your invitation to come back to Winterfell with you, was it ever yours to begin with? Arya whispers at Nymeria, "That's not you." As Nymeria turns her back on her former owner, it's obvious that the wolf has changed forever. The scene was heavy with symbolism. What did this say to you? Did it say that Arya needs her own pack to survive?
I think what it says to me is that Nymeria and Arya have been through so much that what they were when they parted ways previously is not even close to what they have become. Nymeria has become a strong leader of a pack. Nymeria has a whole pack all her own, and she was massive. And I love to see that because I don't think we've seen a direwolf that big yet. I want to know where Ghost is. I want to know where Ghost has gone, because Ghost would be shoulder height to Jon Snow if he grew at the same rate Nymeria did. Maybe Nymeria is just eating better. That's great. But to go from basically a very protective house pet to running a pack in the wild is a great contrast in comparison to Arya, who did some dancing lessons to learn how to fence a little bit, and now can put on faces of anybody she wants, and she can go from being 5'2" to 6'3" with putting some skin on her face. I don't know how she does it. It's pretty cool. I don't know how she changes heights and vocal tones and everything else. It's a neat trick. But the thing is she's an entirely different person. She's gone an entirely different way. It's very cool, and it's great to see that you get somebody where it's not kind of ham-handed or anything, where you can see that, you know, they still know each other, they still respect each other, but our paths will cross, and then we'll split back our separate ways, and that's fine. Because you could see that, to me at least, Nymeria kept the rest of the pack from doing anything to Arya. So, like, I respect you, Arya. This is my area. You can cross here safely. Just...
We'll find dinner somewhere else.
I'm not yours. You're not mine. We are our own people.
Euron attacks the Greyjoy fleet and takes Yara, Alaria, and the youngest Sandsaker hostage. And Theon, trusted advisor and protector, goes full reek overboard and still might be swimming as we speak. Was this Euron's plan all along, or did he get incredibly lucky?
Here's where I stand on this. I think that Theon did the only possible thing he could have done. Now, I know there were lots of people online initially and you know, like, oh, Reek, you idiot, and I can't believe you jumped overboard. But he was through all that crazy PTSD. He's watching all this insanity happen around him. He sees that, you know, he's got Yara by the throat and a crazy ass look in his eyes, like I'm sure he saw from Ramsay many, many, many times. And what was he going to do? I know that Euron, I think, thought that Theon would attempt to run at him, but Euron knew he had both of them, and sort of a move like a callback to Grey Worm when he was cutting both of those slave masters' necks last season. It was going to be real quick and real swift, and they would have both been dead. So I think Theon had no choice but to really just jump over. Was there a lot of respect in the fact that he did that? No, but he's alive. He's going to be able to live another day and hopefully avenge her. If we know what her fate is, that's the...
Well, the only thing that's possible, the only way to keep them both alive, the only way possible is for him to jump, for him to leave the boat. I'm not sure if she lives through this or not. The only way that she has a chance to live is if he leaves. If he attacks, she dies, then he dies.
Exactly.
He doesn't really have a good weapon, and obviously Euron is like a man possessed right now because he's just fought sand snakes. You know, and if you can kill sand snakes as effectively as he did, you're kind of a force to be reckoned with, because we saw them go against Bran and Jaime, and they were like tinkering with them. It was almost comical. So obviously these chicks got some potential, and he just took two of them down. He's like, whatever, crush.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is the only way that Yara and Theon survive at all is if Theon gets out.
Yeah.
So it may appear cowardice, and I think that some of it may have come from the Reek conditioning that he got, but it was honestly the smartest choice. And it's really unfortunate but you know, it's not like he's some skilled knife thrower that he can reach behind his back and whack right into the forehead of Euron. But that's what he would have needed to do. He'd have had to be some amazing person. And the thing is if you remember way back in season 1, when the first wildlings showed up near Winterfell and they were trying to take Bran, right? Theon killed one of the wildlings then who was holding Bran hostage, shot an arrow at him, and got just yelled at by Robb. Robb jumped right down his shit. So it might also go back to that, where it's like you don't endanger someone that you care about because you think you have a shot.
The thing is, I don't think we're looking at the same cocksure Theon that, and pun intended, cocksure Theon that we were looking at in season 1. And this kills me about this whole new brave keyboard warrior internet generation who have never raised a hand, never been in any kind of conflict. Everybody has PSTD suddenly. Everybody's got a gluten or peanut allergy, but they know what's best for somebody. Meanwhile, you know, the character that they're mocking, he's standing there looking at his sister with a knife to her throat, and he realizes that if he moves, she dies, and he also dies. So he takes the safer road and just kind of jumps overboard and gets out of Dodge. Where 99.9% of people would probably do the same thing. There's a small percentage of people that would risk their lives for somebody else. We saw that. I see it constantly with the whole Eugene thing. And even to bring it to real world application, the other day, Daniel Cormier, who's worked his whole life to get somewhere and twice has been stopped by, somebody who he absolutely hates. And both times he broke down and cried. This time after a vicious knockout and probably a concussion, he was breaking down in the middle of the ring, and people have the audacity to throw memes on it. They would never do what this guy just did. And none of these people would do what Theon, they want Theon to do. Go ahead and run to your death, because that would be more heroic and more exciting for me. And that's what bothers me, is that unless you would do it yourself, you can't expect somebody else to do it, whether it be in fantasy or whether it be in reality. You go put gloves on and you go fight Jon Jones and you get the shit knocked out of you, and tell me that you might not break down and cry a little bit. So, Jules, your thoughts on the final scene, the episode, and your rating.
Well, here's the thing. I liked this episode, but I would have probably given this episode maybe a 7.5. But I do feel like the last 10 minutes kicked it into about maybe an 8.3 for me, because I really was not expecting Euron at all. That was not the attack. I was not expecting it. And I felt like that was I just felt like that upped the average of the whole episode for me, because it came unexpectedly. We think they're on their mission. Dany's got the upper hand. She's got this great smooth plan that Tyrion's come up with. And this one just threw a major wrench in it, because now what are we going to do about all the Dorne soldiers? What are we going to do about getting everyone over to get Cersei? I mean, it definitely was a huge wrench in the plan. So that's why I upped the average on this episode. Other than that, I thought the episode, solid, moving forward, definitely a building episode, but the ending for sure, amazing.
Well, when we left this story off, especially after the premiere, everybody was just overestimating the fact that, we got 6 episodes to dethrone Cersei. This should be over and done. We've got all the heroes and we're ready to go. And that doesn't look like this is going to be the case. So if the premiere episode was a Saturday night, Stormborn was a Sunday morning, when reality sets in from everything that you've done the night before and the fact that Monday morning is right around the corner. They've all united. They've all done the hero's march up towards Hilltop. But now what? I love the reality check in the final scene. It just took the wind out of Team Dany's sail. Pun intended. And on top of all that, any episode for me will get points when Littlefinger gets the shit choked out of him. So I'd say the season is off to a running start, and I'll give it a 9.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you. I think I'm going to give it a 9.2 so that I can make up the 2 points that Jules messed with. This is a really good episode, a lot of good visuals, and the thing is for me, anytime pieces move in the Game of Thrones is a winning episode for me. So it's not necessarily placeholder, it's more building. And I love that. I mean, you're seeing things start to fall apart, and it fell apart big time with the Greyjoy fleet getting attacked by the other Greyjoy fleet. Yeah, it's Greyjoys against Greyjoys, but it shows how vicious Euron really is. Maybe you're up against something really tough here. And he's showing his mettle, and that's amazing. And the thing is again, just like every other battle we've seen, this one is enacted completely different. And then watching Theon was fighting just as hard as everybody else there up until the moment his sister's being held by Euron. So when everybody's all huffy-puffy about, no, look, Theon killed a bunch of people and was fighting very hard, but that is his sister and the last living kin that he cares about. Because that may be his uncle. He don't give a fuck about his uncle. He cares about his sister. I get it. I get why he jumped overboard. It's the only way that she might live. Because I don't think Theon cares if he dies or if he lives. But he wants his sister to live. Great episode. 9.3. There you go. 8.75 from the Cynic Radio podcast. Dragonstone from the Game of Thrones.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it's time for Really. I'd explain it. Just listen.
you'll get it.
My really this week is one that hits home for me, and this is to the officials and ride inspectors of the Ohio State Fair. Unfortunately, in a tragic event this week, 18-year-old Tyler Gerald lost his life when the arm of the Fireball ride completely broke apart and sent him and several others spinning into the air and slamming to the ground as the ride broke apart, killing Gerald immediately. Weather conditions had dictated that a lot of the inspections were rushed through in order to get these rides up and running on time by the Wednesday opening of the fair. It was clear, though, that this ride should have never passed inspection as the metal was worn and weathered, and at its very end when this tragedy occurred, causing the arm to completely break. I hope there's a lesson in all this to ride inspectors, that this was a tragedy that could have been prevented, and no life is worth rushing through imperative inspections to make sure it is available on opening day. I know several people personally who rode the ride on that day, and I'm very thankful that they were not on it when this tragedy happened. However, my heart breaks for every other family and person affected by this tragedy on what should have just been a wonderful day at the fair. So to fair officials and ride inspectors who chose to cut corners to get this ride open, really?
Really for me this week comes all the way from Florida. I know. Florida? Really? Yeah, Florida. Again. Still, I should say. 25-year-old Alexander Sperber last week went in and robbed a bank in Fort Lauderdale. Took his bag, went outside, promptly stripped down naked, and ran down the street, throwing money out into the air. Then a red dye pack exploded, staining him and a cast on his left wrist. Apparently, this guy thought this would jumpstart his career as a comedian. Instead, he's being charged by the FBI for bank robbery. Alexander Sperber? Really?
My really this week, and it's baseball related, so just bear with me, is the Chicago Cubs giving a 2016 ring to the infamous one Steve Barton. If you don't know who Steve is, he's an unlucky fan who was sitting in the stands during a playoff game and interfered with a Cubs player as he reached into the seats to catch a foul ball, which some people believe lost them the game and then the playoffs. By the way, this happened all the way back in 2003. No, really, why did they do this? Now, I agree with forgiving him. I mean, he was chased out of the city, but what's the point? It makes no sense. Wasn't there a trainer or a ball girl who was more deserving? This happened years ago, many, many years ago, and we're just unbearing and beating a dead horse. Now, hell, take the time and make sure that every longtime fan, or maybe somebody that's fringe part of the organization, gets a ring. I went to a game last year, and statistics show me attending a game at your stadium increases your odds of winning a championship. It's a fact. But this happened 14 years ago, and to give Steve Bartman a ring. So to the Cubs, that ring, Steve Bartman, this non-story, and a complete waste of time and effort and resources. Really?
And that's it, the end. You've got to the very finish of episode 41 of the Cynic Radio Podcast. I'm Igrahee, and with me, back from vacation, a man whose application to become a beach bum was rejected by the California Tourism Board, Cynic. Also joining us this week has been Jules. We had a great time talking about the Game of Thrones and throwing a little bit of what's up and really at you. Go ahead and send us your comments, questions, concerns, and any used flip-flops you've got to cynicradio@gmail.com. Find us on the internet at cynicradio.com. Look for us on Facebook at facebook.com/cynicradio, and find us on Twitter at Cynic Radio. Also, when you get a chance, head over to tpublic.com, search for Cynic, C-I-N-I-K, and you can go ahead and get your own Cynic Radio merchandise. We've got logos, we've got shirts, we've got cups, we got stickers. Go and check it out. Help support the show. We'd really appreciate it. We love each and every one of you. Keep coming back and sharing the podcast with all your friends, family, and even your enemies, because they need love in their life too. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at cynicradio.com. Available for download on iTunes.
I'm going to pretend I'm Ryan. I don't know.